Greetings from Chattanooga, Tennessee. I hope you guys are doing well out there. So, we're going to talk about QGIS at Henry County, Tennessee. Um, and Chad Howard told me he was going to be hanging out in the YouTube chat, which I am not going to check because of the delay. So you can ask him questions. He'll be in there jumping around. So Chad was the guy I was working with during this. So um, I usually start out with a who, what, when, and where. So the who is me. I run North River Geographic Systems. I've been a QGIS user, I guess, for the last. It seems like a short amount of time compared to everybody else, but like 7 or 8 years, I guess. I've been using it. In the last few years, it's been full time. Um, used to work for the federal government, used the commercial stuff. I've been doing geo for way too long. And I'm on the OSGeo US board. And I'm trying to get kicked off it. And I'm working with QGIS US group, which is fun. I try to stay off as many boards as I can these days. And this story takes place up in Henry County. And in case you're wondering where Henry County is, I know we've got a wide ranging audience, but if you were to look at a map of the US and kind of focus south, you would see Tennessee. And then if you looked kind of in the northwest corner of the state, you would see Henry County. They butt up against Kentucky. They're a rural county. I mean, they don't have a lot of people, but it's a pretty nice place. And to just give you a small plug for Henry County, home of the world's biggest fish fry. And they actually have a 1/16 or something scale Eiffel Tower, which kind of cracks me up, but it is Paris, Tennessee. So, we've got all the hot spots here in the South. We've got Rome, Georgia, Athens, Tennessee, Paris, Tennessee, um, all the places you can go visit. So, 32,000 residents. They're about 580 square miles in size, 25,000 ish addresses. It's probably a little bit more. This slide is a little bit dated, but so what's going on? Ran into Henry County 911 at a conference, and they were running what I would call a traditional setup with with their GIS. They had a couple of copies of ARC, maybe ARC Editor, maybe ArcView. I really don't know. ArcGIS Online. They're running a mix of PCs and Macs. And I'm guessing the Macs, if they were using them for anything, were running some kind of VM software. All their data was in a file-based geodatabase. Their field work, involved taking their data set out into the field. So literally load it on a USB drive and head out. And it was a sneaker net. They're not running enterprise setup. They're sharing data on a USB drive. You do run the risk of handing the data off to somebody and leaving copies sitting around and data getting stale. It's a usable setup. It's a smart group of people. It's not a lot of people do this. They don't want to admit it, but they do it, and it worked. In general, it was working, but they were having growing pains, and they came to a FOSS4G meeting, and I ran into Chad. And we had a long conversation, and there another gentleman, Ed Hawkins, talking to him, and they were looking at other ways of doing things. And it generally comes down. I mean, if you're dealing with in general in any area, increasing your software licensing or trying something open source or trying something different. And they decided they want to do something different. So, um, you know, so the 911 group started working. We started looking at QGIS, and so 911 in Tennessee, they have a Tennessee Next Generation 911 working group. And so the 90 plus counties here in the state, um, they got to maintain three things: points, lines, and polygons: the addresses, the road center lines, and the ESN, the emergency service network, for that county. That's all they've got to maintain, but it's a lot to maintain. I mean, it's a lot of work for three layers. And the layers all have attributes: the OIR ID, which cannot be duplicated, street names, timestamps, descriptions, reasons you retire an address, reasons you keep the address. There's a lot of work that goes into this. Um, the nice thing about it, and kudos to Tennessee for doing this, they've got it all written down. And granted, it's not following the new NINA standard that you see floating out, but this came out a little bit before that happened, so they're still working with this, and it's very comprehensive. They're keeping segment IDs, they're keeping OIRs, like I said, all this stuff, street number left, street number right, and because it's a standard, it makes my life a lot easier. So looking at jumping, from something that's more commercial based to something that's more open, you can do it because you've got a written standard. And so you've got, SQL's a standard, SFSQL. We were looking at using PostGIS as the back end of this. OGC standard services. We don't want to do anything crazy where we're inventing something that's already there. And the standards made it easy. It made it easy to take this and shove this into an open source platform. And so that's what we did. And, our first whack at it, or the first attempt at it, we were taking, Chad kind of rescued some equipment because this was a test. Can we do this? Can we be successful in doing it? And so we pulled out, and this was a couple of years ago. We rescued an old server piece of equipment. Wouldn't recommend doing this, but Chad knows his stuff. We were able to do it. Pulled out some equipment. We set up Linux on it. We went with 1804 at the time. PostGIS, PostgreSQL. We've since upgraded that to 11. PostGIS, I think 2.5. It's time for us to go to 12, but we haven't done that yet. At the time, we were running QGIS, the LTR. 3 was just happening during this, so 3.4 we had jumped to it. We were using Fulcrum, which really the only commercial part of this we were going at the time for mobile data collection. And it was that or Art Collector. We went with Fulcrum. Now we've got more choices. We've got Input, we've got QField, Fulcrum. There's a lot of things we can play with. And we got it working. And so, conceptually, it looked like this, and it's not anything great or grand. It's pretty simple. A mobile component, which was Fulcrum, go out in the field, collect data. Let's shove that into QGIS, check it, make sure it lines up with the ortho imagery, make sure everything's cool with the attributes. Let's push it into PostGIS. We did install GeoServer. We haven't used it a lot because they moved more to a Mango map. There's this Mango map set up, which don't really need GeoServer for that, but GeoServer is starting to get some play, pushing out services and pushing out imagery to the people in it, in the department. So what ended up happening, we got it installed. We migrated out of an Esri file-based geodatabase, which made it simple. QGIS can open it. We can read it in. We can shove it into the database. And it's really not that complicated to do. We installed their Macs with QGIS because we can. We installed their PCs with QGIS. We went probably 3 or 4 copies of QGIS installed throughout the building. And they had Fulcrum, so they purchased it for mobile data collection. And in 4 days, we were kind of done. There were some hiccups. We did have some data that got that was pushed in. We had to massage a little bit. There were some things I set up that a few days later didn't work, but we were able to overcome it and fix it. And it really wasn't that bad. The nice thing was, once we got this installed, QGIS gives you a myriad number of ways to handle data. So we started building forms. And in the nice thing, the form started kind of pointing out some problems with the data. And if you look at the screenshot, you'll see, in this case, we built a form and we had some extra spaces in the pre-dir, the pre-directional attribute. So we worked through that, started removing the spaces, cleaning up the data. And forms are a powerful thing. If you go into 3.14 right now, you can right-click your data layer, go to properties, go to forms, and you can start reliving those, recreating those drop-down lists that you're used to from an Esri standpoint of, subtypes and domains. And we started building that stuff out. So we started building a set of domains in the database to fuel these menus to enter the data. And, it worked really well. Even better, let's use QDesigner to build their forms. So if they've got a certain way that they're they enter data, where Chad or any of the group will go out and collect. They want to collect it in a certain way. Now the database isn't set up in this, this smooth of a fashion, but let's go ahead and build a menu to push type, number, apartment suite, which side of the street you're on, whether you're north, south, east, or west. Are you a main street? Are you what? And you set all this stuff up, and it just made entering the data a lot easier. We tried this a couple different ways. The very nice thing was, once I explained how to do this to the client, to Chad and the group up at Henry County 911, they could build their own menus. They went through and started building and working with the menus that we set up. It just makes it nice, that you can do that. Tennessee actually has a pretty robust GIS program, and we're starting to see more and more open source enter into here. Tennessee has a LiDAR program. Tennessee has an imagery program where they essentially capture, I believe, and I missed the webinar the other day, but they're capturing one full scene of the state over 4 years. So 1/4 of the state gets flown. This is pushed out, as an Esri REST, a WMTS, a WMS. There's several things, but we can leverage that because it's coming out as an OGC standard. We pull that imagery in, and we're able to pull in, and this is pulling out of the WMTS. I believe at the time this was using Google imagery. The state had a contract with Google, and I think that has since changed to, be something else. But it works. It's not a headache for the client to get stuff. We had PostGIS as a back end. Now, since the initial install where we had rescued a server, Chad actually went out and purchased, a server in-house to have everything centrally run. It is a really nice piece of equipment. One of the things you can do, we got PostGIS running on this new piece of equipment. We got all this stuff. Let's start building out functions, triggers, and we set up a whole lot of triggers, to capture information. If you drop an address point, it grabs the ESN polygon. If you put in the full street name, it calculates out and gets everything. And as you can see from the screenshot, like you'll have an address, you also have an address ESN, and the goal is to try to get them to type as little as they need to type. So a lot of this data is fueled through triggers and through forms in QGIS, because the less you got to type, the happier you are, and the less mistakes you're going to make. And so the really cool thing that happened once we got this set up, and like I said, Henry County, Tennessee in general, Henry County in particular, they've got a lot of data. All the counties, every county has a lot of data, from New York to California to everywhere. Let's start pulling all that stuff in. So suddenly, Chad started finding some data that he had. Let's pull in the building footprints. Tennessee just provided from LiDAR a whole set of building footprints. Let's pull in storm shelters. We do love our tornadoes around here. Let's pull in the flood data. We've had some problems pulling in the WMS from the National Flood Group. So we've loaded it in PostGIS. Fire hydrants, points of interest, bridges, LiDAR, whatever they want now, we've got it on their server, backed up, saved. It's pretty nice. It's a fairly robust system now, all running open. The one weird problem that we had in this, as I walked out the door when we finished the install, Chad yelled, "Hey, how do we upload this to the state?" And I went, "What? What do you mean we upload this to the state?" And the state's an Esri shop. Nothing wrong with that, but how do we get our data out of this PostGIS database into something they can use? The last thing I wanted to do was do a file-based geodatabase through some weird, programming feat of strength, but GeoPackage works. So we talked to the vendor. GeoPackage became a thing. We would dump that out every night. An OGR script runs. It dumps streets, ESN, and addresses out into the GeoPackage and uploads it to the state. The state then ingests that data. And we had a few hiccups, like dumping it out. We had some small ints that moved to int. There were a few things with the field types, but we got those fixed. It was an easy fix. OGR is powerful, and this has been running for 2 years with no modifications, um, which is nice. You know, you get an upgrade, and we've had a lot of upgrades of QGIS, and this one small script that we wrote, it's been running for 2 years straight, dumping geo packages to the state and getting pulled into their Esri system. And we did hit some bugs, and a huge shout out to the QGIS developers. We had an offline editing bug, and we dumped some data offline. At the time, Chad was thinking about taking data out with him to the field and syncing it back in. We pulled it out, it kind of scrambled the attributes, and the developers had it fixed within the month. And it just took us filing a bug report, talking to several people, and it worked. It was great. And it was eye-opening, I think, for for Henry County, for a lot of people. Talk nice to the developers, and as we've made mention here, if you want to donate some money, donate it to QGIS, because this was a massive issue, and they fixed it really, really quick for us. So we reported that. What ends up happening now? We can take the road data, we can start doing analysis with it. The open source tools allow us to do the things we need to do. They needed to know a 2 and 5 mile drive time from fire departments. We did it using the GRASS tools through QGIS. And as you can see here, just a screenshot of a map, the areas in red are farther than 2 and 5 miles. So what ends up happening? I don't know, but at least we know at this point, who's kind of farther out than they need to be for fire protection. The really cool thing, I've never talked about this before, me and Chad were going back and forth on this. And really the last thing I want to do is get in between the client and their data. I want them to work with the data. And so we built a model. I built a model, sent it to Chad, he loaded it, and we ran it. And so what he would do is select a fire station, run it, and it would run VNet ISO and spit out a shapefile of what all they needed. And so we took all that data and built this. And it could have been a little bit probably easier, but the client's running models, and all built within Model Designer. And we started working with PostGIS more, pulling out more things. Let's look for duplicate addresses. If we've got an address and we've accidentally clicked twice, let's circle it in red. What if we have an address where we fat fingered the name of the street? Let's mark that in blue. And so you see little blue and red circles come up. So we get that cleaned up. The one weird part in all of this, I know this is a little bit, sensational, but it's true. How did this compare to the commercial solution? I really felt like we built a serious, setup. We built an enterprise solution, and the biggest expenditure they had beyond my time as a consultant was buying Fulcrum. And so we did all this for like $360 plus my time. If we'd went the commercial route, now granted it would have been a one-time dump of $30-ish thousand to get this running, but we got a whole office up and running now on a commercial solution for very little money, and it's working great. The QGIS is now spread throughout Paris. The Department of Transportation is using it. Different people are using it. Part of what I wanted to do also, because Chad had made mention of, they had some misnamed streets on things. Let's update OpenStreetmap. Let's talk to Chad. And so at night, I wanted to know how long this would take. So with a full road layer, talking to Chad, talking to different people, 40-ish hours. I just kind of went through and did a manual update. There was no import or anything else done. But just fixing roads, fixing one-way streets, which there weren't any, adding things into OpenStreetmap to see how that propagates out into the world. So we got an OSM setup out of that. So future plans, I'm probably starting to run out of time. But one thought is to make this more QGIS centric. And, I've kind of thought the idea, and now I'm thinking maybe we can do it. Maybe instead of a PostGIS rollout, maybe we can have a geo package rollout. Maybe. And I know Ed Hawkins, shout out to Ed, has mentioned this several times. I've been playing with it some, not as much as I need to, but I kind of do this at night. Develop install scripts for the database. I've got that done. I want to work more with the NINA standard and see about moving this over at some point. It can be done. Developing QA/QC system, mechanisms for the data, leveraging the LiDAR point cloud. We've got the base data. Can we pull the point cloud in? I can. It's just a matter of sitting down and doing it now. And it's working. And part of the deal is now, playing with QGIS and saying, can we pull in data? Can we go ahead and develop? Can some of the triggers move into QGIS versus storing them in the database? That could change up the game. Maybe we go geopackage spatial eye. What's a good way for the customer, for a client to ingest this data? I don't know. I'm still a fan of PostGIS and probably will remain so, but QGIS is robust enough. There's a lot of different ways to make this work. So with that, I think I'm pretty close to the end. And I guess I can stop for questions or talk about stuff or go back to slides, or what's a good thing to do? Because I can't see the chat window currently.
Well, thank you, Randy.
Hey.
I think the chat is a little light on questions. There's a lot of cheerleading, a lot of Randy fans out there.
Oh, well, that's good.
There's a good question here. What features of upcoming QGIS are you most interested in?
The upcoming features. Oh, man. So, you know what? The one thing I never get to do that I always want to do, and I've got to go back and watch Gretchen's presentation, I never get to make maps. I'm always chugging out data. I'm always throwing data on, throwing data in the spreadsheets, throwing data at the clients. I want to start doing more cartography stuff. Dang it. Darn it. With the data. And so I'm really excited. Like, I watch every release come out and I see the cartography tools going in behind it. And a lot of the functions in the Python going in behind that. I'm not a Python programmer by any stretch of the imagination, but I think we can do a lot. If I could sit down and spend enough time to figure out how to end up automating a lot of things like this, where you're pulling in, more and more data. So, and that's probably not a good answer. All of it will be my answer for QGIS.
Sounds good. Yeah, there's so many good new things coming out. Question, have other neighboring counties been interested?
There has been one. I've talked to, there's another guy, Henderson County. Ed has been working on his own solution, which is very similar to this. I've talked to some other counties. There is some hesitation. We've done some presentations. Everybody gets worried about open source. What's the commercial options for support? And I guess they just don't realize how much of an industry, how much of an ecosystem there is out here, from myself, Lutra. There's so many people that can get commercial support. And I think that often scares people about doing this. So I'm hoping more counties want to do it, because it's pretty smooth once we get it set up. The only problem we're currently having is doing the addressing. I would like to set up an automated way to collect an address. But what I'm seeing is a lot of the counties do that differently. Some manually go out and collect it. Some do some other things. So, there's been some interest. I'm just hoping somebody else jumps on board and we can do this again. Because more people, more features, maybe hire a developer to help do some of this stuff.
Great. There was also a question about, is the county providing any web services, WMS, WFS, with this data? It looks like Chad Howard has already answered that. They're in the process of building a WMS.
Yeah, we've talked about building a WMS. The gas, several of the utilities in the area want the data, and that was a plus with ArcGIS Online. I think you could more, push data up. They could grab it. I don't know exactly what was happening, but we've talked about doing a WMS, and I've talked to the gas company and different utilities about that. If we give you WMS, can you use it? And I think the answer is going to be yes, and I think they can do it. So yeah, we can do that either through GeoServer there locally or in the cloud or somewhere. We can push out services.
And there's a question. Yeah, the questions are coming out now.
Any
plans in the works for a 911 data creation editing extension plugin to conform with NENA? Is that NINA?
Yeah, that's my current fantasy.
And other standards like that.
That's my fantasy. So I've built the NE database in PostGIS, and the same editing rules and actions that we did for Chad's data will work with the Nina database. I mean, it's pretty simple to set up. It's just a matter of following the standard. I would love to build an extension, but that gets into money and gets into a skill set beyond mine. But it's doable. I think it's completely doable, and I think it would be cool if Nina did do that because, they mainly and rightfully so are probably mainly in Esri's shop, and let's mix it up a little bit. It works in QGIS, and I had it running at one point as a demo, and I may have accidentally killed it, but I've got all the scripts to rebuild it, so it can be rebuilt.
All right, why don't we do one more question here? Where did it go? Why would you consider going from PostGIS to GeoPackage?
That's a good question. When you look at all the tools that are coming into QGIS, and I mean, we put a lot of stuff into Post, and I enjoy PostGIS. I mean, that's like my second favoriteest thing in the world to play around with. Options mainly. Could I do it if I wanted to do it? Are there enough tools in QGIS to recreate the triggers? I think currently that's a no, but I don't know. I kind of want to play around with it and see if we can. Going back to the idea of an extension, it would be nice if you could say, you run this extension and say, hey, database, install all this over to PostGIS, or let's install it locally on something else. But I really think PostGIS is probably a better way to do it. It's more robust, but who knows?
Well, any last words for us?
Don't get COVID. How about that? I don't know. Other words, I don't know. If you want to donate to QGIS, please donate. I mean, it's. I know we said that several times during the setup. I've been playing on the back end with Kurt, Michelle, Cliff Patterson, all these guys, and we've had a QGIS North America group for our US group for a while, and this is our first jump into doing a conference, and unfortunately, due to doing the reasons that we're doing it, but it's pretty cool because we got a worldwide audience, and we're all jumping in this together. And QGIS is a fun community. It's a fun community to work with and play with and talk to. So,
totally agree with that. Well, thank you, Randy, for this presentation. Okay. Thanks also for your help getting this whole conference up and running.
It was all you guys. I was just there in the back yelling.